Brexit and no end in sight. The EU and the UK still do not have a trade deal. Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson has to go into corona isolation. After Brexit, the EU and the UK are still fighting for a trade deal. Time is running out. On January 1st, the no-deal Brexit threatens. Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson is struggling with his own party at this stage. The EU and the UK still have 2 weeks to finalize a Brexit deal. Ironically, the British Prime Minister falls on the home stretch. Despite a negative corona test, Johnson has to remain in quarantine. Merkel and the Irish Prime Minister nevertheless believe that a quick breakthrough is possible. Irish Prime Minister Micheál Martin expects the negotiations on a Brexit trade pact between the UK and the EU to be successfully concluded. After talking to British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, I think his gut instinct tells him that a deal makes sense, Martin told Bloomberg on Monday evening. Although no agreement had yet been reached on points of conflict such as fishing rights or competitive conditions, the negotiating teams on both sides were preparing for a conclusion. Chancellor Angela Merkel was not quite as confident, but she too is counting on a success in the Brexit negotiations. She thinks an agreement is still possible, said Merkel, after information from participants in the meeting of the union faction in the Bundestag. However, the negotiations were not progressing excessively quickly. There were still a few problems to be solved. Negotiators David Frost and Michel Barnier are currently negotiating in Brussels. Time is of the essence as both sides have yet to ratify a deal. Several deadlines have already passed. According to media reports, those involved believe a breakthrough early next week is possible. Since this week, the European Union and the UK have been looking for a breakthrough for a trade pact after Brexit in a new and perhaps the final effort. It is precisely in this situation that the news comes from London that Prime Minister Boris Johnson has to go into quarantine again because of a corona case in his environment. In addition, a power struggle in Downing Street had caused a scandal in recent days that could lead to a realignment. Controversial political advisor Dominic Cummings, who had a huge impact on Johnson, is no longer at the controls of power, but reportedly will only finish a few projects by the end of the year. In addition, Johnson's communications chief Lee Kane resigned. In the middle of the decisive phase of the Brexit negotiations, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson remains in quarantine despite an initial negative corona test result. According to the rules, he will remain in self-isolation, said a government spokesman in London. Johnson had gone into quarantine on Sunday evening after a MP he met on Thursday tested positive for the coronavirus. Johnson himself was seriously ill with COVID-19 in the spring and was even treated in the intensive care unit. He felt fit as a butcher's dog and bursting with antibodies, he announced on Monday via video. However, virologists do not rule out new infections in those who have recovered. Johnson will continue his work from Downing Street via video, including PMQs. The Prime Minister's quarantine comes at the same time as the final spurt in London's negotiations on a trade pact with the EU. An agreement or a break in the talks is expected within the next 1 or 2 weeks. The Brexit transition phase will continue until the end of the year with similar rules as before. Without an agreement, there will be tariffs, long traffic jams at the borders and other trade hurdles. Representatives of the EU and the UK met again in Brussels as chief negotiator Michel Barnier announced on Twitter. There are only a few days left for agreement, as an agreement would have to be ratified before the end of this year. Barnier wrote that the EU side remains determined, patient, respectful. They want an open but fair cooperation for the future. EU Commission Vice President Maroš Šefčovič made a similar statement. We are ready for an ambitious deal and are turning every stone individually to see how we can achieve it. The EU does not want an agreement at any price, but we want one deal, we are ready for a deal. Every remaining minute must be used for this. British negotiator David Frost said on Sunday that there had been some progress in a positive direction in the past few days. A common text of the contract was largely agreed, although there is of course still no agreement on significant points. A comprehensive free trade agreement is being negotiated to avoid tariffs and other trade barriers if the UK also leaves the customs union and the EU internal market at the end of the year. For months there has been a problem with the same points, including the rules for EU fishermen in British waters and the level playing field. The British press believe that London's position in the negotiations has now been weakened. The Independent comment on the talks. With Joe Biden as elected US president, the anyway unrealistic idea that an economic partnership with the United States could offset the loss of the European internal market has died. Britain can no longer use its special relationship with the US to push the EU into a deal. The future US president has made it clear that he attaches great importance to the Good Friday Agreement and the provisions on Ireland in the treaty for Great Britain to leave the EU. That weakened London's negotiation position. Boris Johnson can also not follow and allow a significant change within the Brexit talks. The pressure within the party is too great for that. Johnson is dealing with a faction of downright hardliners. Should a compromise mean that the British will be bound by all kinds of EU rules for years to come, an uprising could break out in his party. So it seems Boris Johnson's option seems to be to take whatever he can get from the EU. He'll give in to the rest, announce a victory, and then just carry on as usual. Exactly the strategy that he used for the exit agreement a year ago. And if you now want to know more about Brexit, YouTube has chosen another of my videos right here for you on the end screen. And with all the other buttons, you can subscribe to my other English channels. I'll see you in my next video. Click and enjoy. Viel Spaß.